Our next guest, a presentation of the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now playing in summer condition and to rave reviews. And we know that because we are those rave reviews.
So good.
Played there last Monday, and we have been raving about it ever since.
And we saw the Bears.
We saw a bear. It was 13th tee box.
Something
just
like
hanging out in the meadow.
All high on dandelions.
High on dandelions. Not at all concerned about the golfers in his midst. All sorts of photo opportunities there.
GML Chris Manson talked about the getting high off dandelions like that was common knowledge. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Would we get high on dandelions if we ate them?
Dopey.
Yeah.
Eating all the dandelions. Then they're placid and roly-poly. Quite a sight. And with the extended daylight hours in June, you can take advantage of the afternoon twilight rates and the amazing evening sunsets in Whistler. Sounds glorious. Book your twilight time or anytime during the 2024 season. Visit whistlergolf.com.
Next time you get ramped up, I'm going to make you a dandelion salad. Just to calm your ass down a little bit.
Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media. He covers the Vancouver Canucks and talks to us on Thursdays. How are you?
Well, let's ask him without the mute button, shall we? Let's take off that mute button. There we go, Patrick.
Try again.
Well, boys, we had a bear in the complex this week, so it's just like we're golfing in Whistler.
You guys had a bear in Burnaby?
Every once in a while. We're sort of, there's enough green area around us.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a young bear that wandered through, and my wife saw him through the window. It was right at the end of school, like the end of the day, school day.
Oh,
call somebody. And I'm like, who? And then he wandered away or the other way, rolling in the leaves, apparently.
And in North Van, they call that Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Or Coquitlam. Yeah. I mean, I could
You have the teddy bear picnic, don't you?
A lot of nights.
A month or so?
They have it usually in my garbage can. Yeah, absolutely.
My buddy Tom lives on the back of Hoy Creek, and they can't have a back fence, partly because it's green space, but also because there's so many bears coming in that they would just, you'd be rebuilding your
fence. I put a cattle fence in my last house, and that finally kept them out. Like full on big posts with massive cage, and they couldn't take that down. Yeah.
Did you do that yourself?
I did not. No.
I understand you've talked to Dan Milstein with regards to Ilya Mikheyev and his activities there trying to facilitate a trade.
Simply just confirming that, yes, he is able to talk to other teams on behalf of the Canucks to see if there is interest. Didn't have much to say beyond that, but I mean, you sit back, you zoom out, and it is obviously a sign that the Canucks have not had much success. And of course, recent history is that it doesn't work that well, although it works out in the long run for the player and the team if you talk to Brock Besser and Connor Garland.
Yes, right.
Their agents were involved at one point, but neither player ended up being traded, and both players had, I would say, career-defining seasons this year.
So you're forecasting that for Mikheyev.
And there's a lot of Canucks fans, and I've heard this in media circles as well, thinking the same could happen with Ilya Mikheyev. What do you think the chances are that he has this bounce-back season in the vein of Besser or Garland after seeking or after being shopped?
Well, I don't know what to think. I mean, I think about the fact that, yes, he kept getting chances, especially against the Oilers, and he kept not burying them, and he kept shooting like me. So I would say that, I had a career high in goals in beer league this year, so anything's possible. But coming back from where he's been struggling at in terms of finishing, it's just a hard thing to see.
Your cap hit's a lot lower than his, so
my cap hit is extremely low.
With you, there's a lot of skepticism. Are we to assume that all of these transactions are full salary transactions? Do you think Dan Milstein's allowed to shop $1 million of cap retention? Like, what do you think?
Well, I saw J-Pat, saying I expect that he'll find out the same thing that Canucks have, which is you're not going to be able to do this without doing some kind of sweetener.
Yeah.
And they're just going to have to, they don't have a lot to work with, obviously, in terms of picks, but if there's a team out there that's interested in a couple late picks, maybe it can convince them. I just have a hard time imagining that this is going to be a terribly easy one to do.
San Jose doesn't seem to care. Taking
no.
Goodrow.
That was yeah, but Barclay Goodrow also scored 6 goals in the playoffs, and Ilya Mikheyev scored 1 goal in his last 61 games this season. So
But he doesn't surrender goals, and Goodrow does like it's Halloween. So
True. Yeah. Like, listen, I'm sure, I have no doubt there is value out there that there is a team that would say, yeah, great, we'll take him. But I don't think anybody's doing it as a favor at this point, especially when they know the Canucks are doing it because they're trying to take some big swings at some big players.
Right.
correct.
If you're San Jose, like if this helps the Canucks get Jake Guentzel, like Jake Guentzel will be here for a long time. San Jose doesn't want to face Jake Guentzel at all. So, what's the incentive for them other than getting a player, I guess, and maybe a draft pick?
Did you hear the backstory there too? That Goodrow, for whatever reason, had San Jose on his no trade list. I guess they're so poor.
So we think.
But of course, they played there in the past. And Chris Drury said, "Okay, well, you're not accepting a trade to Kansas City or to San Jose. We're going to cut you." And they have waiver priority. So there you go.
Sure. I mean, I will point out Chris Drury, Mike Greer, old buddies from Boston University. The year I lived in Boston, they were the stars of BU. Greer, especially. Greer was this incredible collegiate player. So I mean, it didn't surprise me that the two of them got together to perhaps swing something that is a little bit under as Brian Burke would say, against the spirit of the rules. But here we are.
I didn't know you lived in Boston for a year.
He threw that out so cavalier.
I thought we talked about this before.
No.
Yeah.
My year in Toha, and
my dad taught at Harvard for a year.
Your dad what?
Taught at Harvard
for a
year.
You
taught the car at Harvard Yard?
We did, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're a real New Englander now, Peach.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting rid of the Mikheyev salary to facilitate big swings, Guentzel. Saravelli thinks 7 years, $9.5 million per. Should they do that deal? Would you do that deal?
It's a lot of money at the back end for a guy that, I mean, the two-way game is so impressive. You have to think there's going to be value there for a long, long time because players don't forget how to play. It's just that they get slower. But yeah, you're talking about one that's going to be into his late 30s. You've already committed to JT Miller into his mid to late 30s. It would make me anxious, but certainly if that's the price to get your team to the next level that you need it to be in the next 2 years, maybe you don't have a choice. I mean, as they say, flags fly forever. And if you're trying to put up a Stanley Cup banner and that gets you a Stanley Cup banner.
Let me ask you. I hear you. Does he get you to the next level?
I think so. Yeah.
Even you're not going to be able to do around him after committing that kind of money?
I mean, you've already got your number 2 defenseman locked down, right? You've got your number 1 defenseman and your goalie locked in for the next 2 seasons. You've got your top 2 centers locked in forever. You've got your star winger who has finally played like a star winger locked in for at least this year. I mean, the signing Guentzel probably means it's going to be pretty hard to bring back Besser. Like that's what that means. But you've got Besser, you've got Garland. Like you've got lots of stuff in here that makes your team good. Signing Guentzel is a player that they really you could see in the playoffs. They wish they'd had Jake Guentzel on their roster in the playoffs, right? So, and they were close. They were not on the verge of beating the Oilers, but they were close. And Jake Guentzel maybe makes a difference.
Would there be any chance that they and again, folks, calm down. I'm not trying to rumor monger here at all, but would there be a chance that they trade Brock Besser just because they've only got the 1 year left? It's a hell of a lot more advantageous to trade him now than at any other time.
Yeah.
And then you use that space differently for this year as well. I mean, I haven't heard that broach because everybody's in love because he scored 40 goals, and I understand that, Hunter. I'm not chasing him out of town. I'm just saying, is there a ruthless move to be made there if you're the ruthless Jim Rutherford?
If you can find if there's a young cheap winger that you're trying to do a swap around with, like the idea of moving one piece out to move in another piece in, like that was something that I know they talked about certainly at 2023 deadline. I've talked about the Lafreniere noise before. There was some thought of that, like moving things around, finding a younger winger, that there's a bit more, cost control and that kind of thing. I don't have any sense that Besser's a guy that they've been actively doing something on, but you have to think they sit there. They ask the what ifs all the time. right? Like this is not that when you're asking what ifs, you're not shy about your options. You say, what if we did this? What could we do? Right? Absolutely. I'm sure that's a thought they've had.
And you don't do that if you don't sign Jake Guentzel. But if you sign Jake Guentzel, I do wonder, like, what's the MO here? And he's a cheap price right now. So I get you want him on your cap right now because he's relatively cheap at 6.6. But what's the end game? Him just walking, you signing him to a $10 million deal next year? Like,
well, that's it.
You got to put yourself 12 months from now. And are you in a really disadvantageous position at that point?
I mean, as I wrote last week, it is, having talked to people, clear that Brock Besser would like to have Jake Guentzel on this team, a guy he knows pretty well.
Yeah.
And he knows every player on that team knows what Guentzel would bring to the table, right? And you're certainly not rooting for someone because you think they might take your job away. And I don't think, that's certainly not something Brock Besser would be thinking. He'd be thinking, I want him on this team and I want to win, and that's all that matters.
Right.
I mean, maybe you can get Besser in. He's say, listen, we know you love it here. You really can lean on him on that one. We know you love it here. You're not going to get market rate if you stay. That's the deal.
Yeah. We
may have to trade you because look at where we are. He is a guy that thinks about rosters. But I mean, we'll see. I like you said, that's something that would really probably only happen if they do get Guentzel. And then even then, I'm sure it's what they don't want to do. I think this is the lineup they like. They want to add. They don't want to subtract. But at the same time, if you can make a big, enormous, elaborate trade, and I guess Irf was talking about trading for an RFA on rink wide, maybe that's what you got to do. I don't know.
Let me ask you on Guentzel in these terms. Do you think he's a finishing piece for them? Like, do you think they are good enough that Guentzel is an over-the-top piece for them?
He's close to it. I mean, I think it depends on how things shake out on the blue line. It is clear that they would like to add another defenseman that can do, whether it's similar things to Hronek or a partner for Hronek, which then means you need a partner for Hughes.
Right.
To me, it's one of essentially two pieces. You need some kind of interesting piece on the blue line to go with Guentzel, because then you've got essentially say it's Pettersson, Guentzel, Miller, and Besser, Garland in the mix somewhere. You're hopeful that one of the young guys, Höglander probably is a third line winger. Maybe Podkolzin can find his way up, but in the end, you're a lot closer to where you want to be than you were without him.
See, because that's the rub for me here. They need another top four defenseman. We all agree that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Which is where the Mikheyev thing comes in, right? Like that's I think why they're being cautious with Zadorov, because they know what they need to spend on, and it's not a fun, exciting, but realistically third pairing defenseman.
So collectively, we think Besser, Guentzel, Höglander, who, as we know, had his struggles in the playoffs, Garland, is a good enough group of top six wingers. And then, Peach, you're comfortable with Suter between DiGiuseppe and Podkolzin, Oman between Baines and Carlson?
No, because you're still having to find a new Dakota Joshua. Like, no, don't get me wrong, right?
Okay.
Like,
but that's the rub here, guys.
Yeah. No, you need to get some value. Yeah.
$9.5 million. You're not filling out the rest of this roster with championship level.
And that's why it's not a simple puzzle, right? Like, that is why we come back to wanting to trade Mikheyev
over the top piece. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
Like, if this was a year from now where you looked at your team and went, we got solid top four defense, we feel really good about our third line, and particularly our third line center, and we're just looking to fill out the third pair and the fourth line. At that point, blow your brains out. Go get Guentzel.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little bit rushing the fences and cart before the horse.
Well, yeah, and you're right. Like, in the end, I think they want to find another center. Like, I don't think Pius Suter is going to be that other center. I think they want somebody else. So yeah, you're exactly, Matt. Like, it's not simple. but Guentzel takes you a long way towards where you're trying to get.
And Guentzel's available now. He's not available next summer.
Right.
So if you win the sweep, and you don't always win the sweepstakes, there might be a guy like Guentzel next summer, but you don't always win the sweepstakes. If you are in position to win a sweepstakes, you make the move now. You maybe don't think he's the finishing piece for this year, but you think you can put yourself in position to be that contender a year from now. You don't always put, the puzzle doesn't come together in 1 year.
No, I hear what you're saying. And just, a quick glance at next year's UFA winger crop. I'm not sure there is a Jake Guentzel there. I'd have to go through it a little more fine tooth comb. There's some decent looking players there. Nikolai Ehlers could well be a free agent next year. I'm looking at Pavel Buchnevich could well be a unrestricted free agent.
Neither one of those guys is
next year.
Is Jay Guentzel, though.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Buchnevich would make this. I mean, I talked to him during the season. He's a guy that would make this team a lot better, but I still think Guentzel's better right now anyway.
Do you think there's a potential that the RFA that Urfa is a defenseman, or do you think it's definitely a winger?
I think it's I couldn't guess. I mean, there are. I mean, when I look at the free agent list, there have been some interesting names, but generally, I've not been looking at the RFAs because
I Martin HS. We know they were there.
Yeah,
I wonder if it's Sean Dursey, the right shot defenseman in Utah. There's a part of me that wonders whether it's Perfetti in Winnipeg.
Healthy scratch in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. But I come back to that question though of like who would be comfortable making a deal out west. Right. So probably it's someone back east. That's just my instinct. But I in the end don't have any particular I mean, I'd have to get this list up. So,
well, it's a big list, and you're not necessarily sure. Ryan Lindgren, interesting with the Rangers. He's a RFA as well. Just back on the Guentzel. So use it because I've argued all week. You can get 2 forwards for the price of Guentzel, right? Or 2 players.
Probably, yeah.
So you don't think they're better off going like a $6 million winger and a $3 million winger? And constructing a better top 9, even if you're lacking the, pure
true difference
goal
maker.
Scorer.
I mean, I just think Guentzel just ticks so many boxes and does so many things so well. He's not a unicorn, but he's a player that is in a category. He's at the top of the tier, right?
Or do you save $3 million maybe and go to a guy like Jonathan Marchessault and hope that he's Joe Pavelski?
Listen, if you can get Jonathan Marchessault for on a steal, like yes, absolutely. Like that's a great comparable and a great sort of counter.
If he's 6.5 for 4 years,
and
Pavelski, then you're saving a ton of money there.
Yeah, like Marchessault has continued to be the outstanding player that the computer boys recognized he was going to be way back when.
Yeah.
And Dale Talon didn't for whatever reason. He's an excellent player, and they would be very smart to get him. Absolutely. That would be a guy that would be a great alternative to Guentzel.
And he's got Pavelski-ish vibes that lead you to believe he's probably going to be good late. Now, his 38, I don't know, but certainly through the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Let me where was I going next? Oh, Hronek. We haven't had a chance to talk to you about Hronek extension.
Which
is why we moved on to Guentzel in that he gives you peace of mind, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good value. Although, when you see noise that Jacob Slavin's going to sign for less, you start going, ooh.
But that's to stay as well, right? So it's not
but anyway, it's fine. He's a good player. He has a great partnership with Hughes. The question of him being able to run his own, I mean, I certainly think originally that was the plan, was to try to get him to run his own pairing. I think he is a bit contingent on who he plays with. Obviously, playing with Hughes is an amazing opportunity. I asked him, "Is it hard, like a guy that good?" And he goes, "No, it's just so much fun." And essentially said that. And listen, he was quite. I mean, but on the side note, quite at ease yesterday when we talked to him. Real night and day from
How did that
last saw him. And he even made a joke about it. I mean, he actually joked about that. And then I sort of asked him about the Euro and did you watch the game? And he said, "Yeah, I watched a bit. I think I like Champions League better," which was pretty good. I thought very dry. You had to be paying attention to realize what he was saying. But
and at times he does seem wound tight. Do you think the contract changes him, and not that he lets out and he's not as good a player, but do you think there's a chance it unlocks sort of a more loose player in a good way, I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he certainly now knows where he's going to be, right? Like his life is locked in.
His life is settled.
So, yeah. And he's made a choice, and he had to sit back, and similarly as Pettersson, he had to sit back and be, yeah, okay. I mean, as he pointed out, he was restricted. He didn't have a lot of choices. That said, he could have just sat back and said, "I want to go to arbitration, and then I'll be a free agent. I can go wherever I want."
Mm-hmm.
So he did have a hammer here, and he ended up saying, "No, I'm going to stick around, and I'm happy to be here, and an NMC, right?"
That's it, Patrick. I'm frankly surprised they got him at 7.25, with a buyoutable contract at the end, and a 17 teams you can trade him to in the final years. This is pretty good work here from Rutherford. I'm quite impressed that they were able to tick that many boxes. Not to mention, you keep what was one of the best defense pairs in the National Hockey League together, and there's value on that. What's your gut tell you on Zadorov?
My gut is no.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a confident no, because the player definitely does like it here and is keen to set down some roots. But at the end of the day, I mean, he'll know what his price is. He knows what his price is, and it's kind of gotta, do you really want to do this? What do you want to do? But I'll just my last point. Like Joshua, this is his. I mean, he's gotten paid well. Joshua is more than anything is a guy who this is his chance to get paid.
Right, the difference economic
still gets to lock in where he's going to be. So the fact he hasn't yet, to me, is the telling thing.
Do you think it's a situation where if the calendar gets to July 1st and Nikita isn't signed here, he gone?
I mean,
do you think they have to get him done before July 1st, or do you see a world where
I mean, you listen, we all know that teams aren't talking, but they sure are talking, So there's idea
he gets past July 1st that goes
would
back.
You consider a contract like this?
Yes.
Like the idea that they haven't had something quietly slipped along that whoever it would be is interested in signing you for something like this. Hasn't happened. They know what's out there, and So I really think if it doesn't get done by July 1, it's not happening.
All right, Grady has delivered breakfast, so we're gonna let you go and catch.
All right, he's back in the good books
when he does that.
When he delivers food to the group.
Attaboy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this, Patrick. Next week we're gonna be talking. The Stanley Cup Finals can be done. We're going to be a day away from the draft. We're going to be a few days away from Canada Day and free agency.
Maybe the schedule's already been released.
Get excited.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? The season will be over?
That's right. Yeah. It'll be 2026 next week.
Oh, Christ. Why? Once again, why did we have to wait so long in the Stanley Cup Final? ABC, get your you-know-what together.
I forgot. Who's in it? Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.